guys, we're back with Tim Skousen, and actually talking about the film that we had really been looking forward to talking about, Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made. It's kind of a mouthful, but I think it'll be worth it to see this thing.
We just call it Raiders for short.
That'll do.
Of course, that can refer to many things, football teams and the real movie, obviously.
Well, these Raiders are not a sorry team right now. These are successful Raiders, so in some level. So, what can you tell us about the idea to make a documentary based on Adaptation?
Okay. So the Adaptation, obviously, is almost like an urban legend. I mean, it was something that people heard about, but because of the copyright issues, Chris Strompoulos and Eric Zale have been very quick to ever shut it down if it was ever on YouTube and things like that. So it's a lot harder to try to see the film. And so Jeremy, the other producer, was at a film festival and he saw it. It was just playing at a film festival because they do these charity screenings. So he saw it and he was like, how do I not know more about this? Like, I'd kind of heard about it, but how do I not know this story? And so he convinced Chris to say yes to doing a documentary with him. And the documentary is kind of a no-brainer in a sense because everyone who watches the Adaptation comes out of it saying, like, what happened to these kids? Like, how did they pull this off? Like, how did this happen? And so we did this documentary about the story of them making the film for 7 years. And then also there was the one scene that they never did, which was the bald Nazi being hacked up in the airplane. And so they decided to go out and finally finish it. And so that was something that we covered as well this last summer. So, of course, as kids, they wanted to do the best job that they could. As adults, they decided, okay, what do we do? Do we act like we were kids again, or do we do like the best job we could again? So they decided to do the best thing they could, so they actually rebuilt a 75-foot replica of the flying wing and then blew it up.
So why do you think it's the greatest fan film ever made? Is it because of the passion put into it?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because of how early it was. Because it was before you could even get a copy of the film. I mean, this is before you could even watch Raiders on VHS. So in order to see it, they had to go to the theater. Then they just had to like burn it into their minds. I mean, they went and bought like comic books and they bought like making of books and things like that. But for the most part, they had to remember how to make it just from having seen it on the screen. So to do something that big for that period of time and to have it be that successful, I think that's where that moniker, which we didn't give it, by the way. I mean, this is something that a few magazines have called the greatest fan film of all time, but I think that's why, because they did not just characters from that world and make up our own story. They remade the film over the course of 7 years, shot for shot, which makes it different from a lot of fan films. Most fan films, it's like, let's take stormtroopers and let's make cops out of it and call it Troopers, which is a great series. It was really funny, but it's not quite the same as just like, we love this film so much, we want to remake it ourselves with ourselves in it. And then having it take 7 years is just crazy. I mean, how many 11-year-olds do you know will stick through with something like that for 7 years? I mean, they don't hit like 14 and say, I'm done with this, you know. I mean, the idea that they did it all the way till they were 18 is just crazy.
One of the things that I always loved about this film is the scene where they light themselves on fire in the little bar. Because you're thinking to yourself, how are these kids not going to kill themselves? Because we've all had those instances where we read, well, they were charged, whatever, and then they threw gasoline on them, like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, you guys realize that was their basement, right? It's not even like they went to some like shack or something like that. They like went into their own basement with like 32 bottles of isopropyl alcohol that they dumped into a bucket. And they're just like splashing it all over the place and just lighting this huge fire in their basement. So it is miraculous. You watch that scene and you do say to yourself, like, how on earth did these guys not kill themselves? How did they not burn the house down? And I think that's part of the charm of the movie. They, you know, one of the people we interviewed is Jason Lamb, who was the cameraman, and he said, I really believe that, how does he put it? He's like, angels protect fools and children. And he said he really believes that because as kids, they were both foolish and kids, and they really lucked out. I mean, the only one who got hurt during the whole thing was Eric, who was the director, and he didn't do any of the stunts. Like, he broke his arm swinging in a tree to try to show them how to do something, and he almost went blind because they put plaster on his face, and the plaster was the wrong kind of plaster, and they couldn't get it off. They forgot to put Vaseline on, so like all his eyebrows got embedded in it. They tried to pull it off, and it was going to like rip his skin off. So Eric, who's the director behind the camera, he also played Belloc, but he's the only one that really ever came close to getting hurt. But Chris playing Indy, I mean, this guy's like jumping off of trees onto moving trucks. like holding onto the truck as it's going forward. This truck had no engine in it, by the way. So like they duct taped like a mattress to the front of another truck and just pushed the truck that they were filming with. I mean, it was insane. Like there was no way, if he had fallen, there's no way they could have stopped in time. He would have been dead or at least run over. I mean, maybe not dead, but yeah, it's miraculous. The house burning scene is unbelievable. They actually got caught because they lit Eric on fire and they couldn't put it back out because they used gasoline, and they got shut down for like a whole year. Now you would think 13-year-olds getting shut down for a whole year would like give up, like forget that thing. But they're like, no, Mom, really, we got to finish this scene. And so the mom gave them permission, and they.
Well, see, and that's the thing about like parents. I think everybody wants to try to recreate that scene when they're kids, when they're pretending. And most kids get caught by their mom. What are you doing with that gasoline?
Right, right. They kind of had this strange luck in the sense that like they didn't have they both came from single homes, and their parents were both like trying to put food on the table. So it was this combination of like people think it's like negligent parents. They like watch it and they're like, where were the parents? But really the parents were just trying to like give them a creative outlet, and at the same time like they were just super busy trying to keep everyone alive. And so you really kind of get this lucky time period. I mean, it's the 80s. So people didn't have to wear helmets or whatever. I mean, they should have, but they didn't, whatever, It was a different time period. And the parents really facilitated it. They really allowed them to kind of go off on their own. And they didn't ask, like, why are you taking that can of gasoline over there, Or maybe they didn't know. So anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the moms didn't know because we got to film about it.
I'm curious about the involvement of the parents when talking about this. Did y'all have a chance to talk with any of the parents about?
Absolutely, yeah. We interviewed all the parents, and they knew the whole time, and they were very supportive. So they knew they were making a movie. They wanted to help them make the movie. They didn't know the details sometimes, like when they did the truck scene after the fire, and they'd gotten in trouble because of the fire. They kind of knew, like, okay, we're going to do the truck scene out in the woods. We'll see you later, And then they'd come home, and it wasn't until they saw the footage that they were like, oh my gosh, you're really like, I mean, Chris is really being dragged behind this truck. I mean, he's really like, he's straddling like the truck's wheel coming towards him. Like if he were to fall, I mean, death, And so it's miraculous. But the parents were very supportive, actually.
What is it about Raiders of the Lost Ark is that great adventure film? I mean, there's a lot of movies from our childhood that you can recreate. I mean, original Star Wars trilogy, we've all pretended in that. But Raiders, that one movie.
Well, everyone loves Star Wars because Star Wars had a sense of adventure too.
Right.
And it was also a bit of fantasy. I mean, the space opera thing, I mean, it was really like you got engrossed in this world. For the first time in a long time in movies, it looked kind of real. You're seeing space, but it looked really cool. And so everyone liked that, but it wasn't until Raiders came along that you saw something with that much adventure happening in the real world. And I think that's kind of the combination. Like you saw Indiana Jones and you said to yourself, like, this guy could be real, and he seems like the type of person that I could become. He's not a superhero, he's not out in space, he's somebody that studied, he's physical, he can get the ladies, he's witty, he knows how to get laughs. I mean, he was like the ultimate hero in a sense. I mean, the only one that really comes close is Han Solo, who's also Harrison Ford,
It's almost kind of Bond-like in a way.
Yeah, or Bond-like. I mean, it's just one of those movies that has everything. It has the romance, it has comedy, it has action, it has adventure. I mean, so I think it just captured everyone's imagination. You felt like you were in on some secret that was real, because the Ark of the Covenant was this real thing. I mean, they always tried to go after these, like, the Holy Grail. I mean, that's supposedly real, like it's not, a crystal skull. We'll pretend like that one didn't happen, but it wasn't like some made up thing. It was these artifacts that seemed like you could actually go out and find. So I think that was all part of it, the reality of it.
Have they ever talked about recreating another Indiana Jones movie?
They joke about it, but no, this is it.
Maybe like we're going to recreate Crystal Skull and make it good.
They're going to make it better? Crystal Skull could have been... Anyways, that's not talk about it.
Yeah.
No, they have some original films they're trying to do. Original films that are kind of indie-esque, so like adventure-type films. They have a film called What the River Takes, a script that they're trying to get made. And so they have aspirations of doing something. And I hope because of the documentary and because of the interest that they get a chance to do it, because they're actually quite bright, really, really smart guys. Eric is unbelievably talented. and Chris is a good actor, you know. So I would love to see them get that opportunity.
Now to ask you another question within our universe, we've already asked you about superheroes and stuff, but from a documentary standpoint, what other thing fascinates you in the nerd universe? Or better yet, since we've already asked about superheroes, would you do a documentary for Star Wars or Star Trek?
I would love to do a documentary about the similarities and differences between Star Wars and Star Trek, because that to me would be an interesting comparison contrast. What attracts the certain mentality to be more Star Wars over Star Trek? So I could see doing something like that, because to me, I mean, I think there's fans of both. I mean, I'm a fan of both, but I tend to lean a little bit more Star Wars, although Next Generation was totally awesome, you know, so, but I mean, that would be interesting to me, like, what's the difference between a Star Wars fan and a Star Trek fan?
When you hear the conversation all the time from different nerds who side one or the other, and they give you a whole list of why this is better or that's better. So I think it's something that would be a great story to tell. A lot of people are thinking it already. So
yeah, you could definitely do something that I think people would be interested in, and I think hits home for almost everybody of a certain age. I mean, I guess you could do like a Guardians of the Galaxy version for the younger generation, but you know, what's better, that or Avengers, you know? But so everyone likes both of those, so they're pretty good. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing a one-on-one with us.
Absolutely.